Good evening, everyone. Can I get a wave? Wow, I see everyone's awake. I think I can say without fear of contradiction that I am the last speaker of the day, and I'll hope to be short and sweet in the delivery of my presentation for the day. So as we wait for the slides, I can just basically give you a brief background for the benefit of the other countries. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is a corporate body that was established through Article 79 of the Constitution of Kenya. And our core mandate is to combat corruption and economic crimes, as well as promote ethical standards and practices. So today I'll talk about digital forensics. Okay, a bit of a technical hitch here. So, what is forensics? Forensics is basically the application of scientific or technical methods in investigation of a crime. And in forensics, the end goal is admissibility of evidence in court. So when it comes to digital forensics, we are aiming at collecting evidence that we primarily obtain through computers, electronic media, or any digital devices that we may have. So when it comes to digital forensics, before I go there, how many of you have children here? How many have kids? Okay, quite a good number. So when you find your maybe 3-year-old at the time coloring on the wall, what's the first thing they do when you come up to them? What would they do when you find your 3-year-old coloring on the wall? They're holding the pen. Then you shout their name, "Mama, what are you doing?" What would they do? They would hide the pen. Well, I'm not trying to insinuate your children are criminal. But that mindset is the exact same mindset that occurs in any crime scene. So the moment a crime is committed, whether it's murder, you want to try to hide your weapon, right? So when it comes to digital forensics, this is the gold mine of any investigator. When you come across a folder of everything they've been trying to hide, because everyone who attempts to do anything illegal will try and get the evidence away. So when it comes to digital forensics, we're trying to trace and find what exactly went wrong. Where did these deleted items go? Because most times you won't find it there at the face of the computer. So I'll take you briefly through what the process of digital forensics entails. Because in as much as we've said that there's an increase in digitization in the country, a lot of good things have come with it, but we know every rose has a thorn. And the thorn here is the weaknesses we find in the system. And through digital forensics, we aim to try to analyze these breaches and be able to locate perpetrators so that we can prevent these breaches from happening again. So the first step, ideally, would be identification. Here we want to know what exactly are we going for in a crime scene, for example. So if today I get a report that Ram has been seen driving a very fancy car, and we're not sure if what we are paying him here is enough for him to be driving that car, the first thing I'd do is I'd go and find out, how did Ram get the money to buy this car? So I'd start narrowing down my scope to what are his bank accounts? What are his transactions like? Who has he been dealing with? And to do that, obviously, I will try to go the legal way. So we'll obtain a warrant to search Ram's premises. And in the process, I will recover his very fancy mobile phone, probably a laptop here and there, an iPad or two. Once I find them, I have to preserve that. That means I have to carry it in a way that I'm not editing the information that is already there. So once I preserve it, I take it back to our lab, and I'll go and get an image of all the devices that I've obtained. I obtain the image, I keep the device away, now I have my own backup copy. Once I get that, we go into the analysis. The analysis is a deep dive into a lot of data. You can imagine the type of information someone would be holding in their laptops, in their mobile phones. So we'll try and narrow down, pitch up the pieces, try to corroborate the evidence we find online or in the devices with whatever other physical evidence we may get. Because, for example, as we are searching through Ram's fancy car, we find a title deed, and it has a name. So now we have something that's guiding us in our process when undertaking the analysis. We use keyword searches. So instead of finding any property, if I find that this is a property in Thika, I'll go into the device and say, what does he have here under Thika? Then maybe, maybe not, I'll see correspondence with somebody else. Then through that, we get an additional name. And with that, we keep on patching up the pieces. Once we've been able to do the analysis, then we go into the documentation. After sifting through loads and loads of data, we now try to bring it down to only what is relevant. Because trust me, you go through crazy and crazy amounts of data. This could take even days to analyze, months even. So once you get the details, you put it out in a proper manner, make sure you're precise, capture all the relevant details. And then the last element is the presentation. Remember, we were targeting the courts when we were doing this digital forensics because we're trying to get evidence that we can present in a court of law. And for us to be able to present that in a court of law, we have to be able to put it in a manner that common man can understand. Being here throughout these 2 days, I've had a lot of big words being dropped, big names being dropped. So not everyone may understand the technical jargon that we may be discussing in this space. So we need to be able to make it such that even Mama Mboga, rather the person who sells groceries by the roadside, is able to understand what it is you're presenting. Okay, so overall, the purpose of digital forensics is that they help in the investigation of cyber attacks on your resources so that you can know what data has been compromised. I know a lot of speakers have gone into the detail of this, but basically through digital forensics, what you're able to do is you're able to retrace the steps of the hacker. How did they get in? What information were they able to obtain? How long were they on the network? Were we able to preserve the phishing email, or was it all deleted such that we don't have a trail? So through digital forensics, because everything is recorded, we're able to have a trace of how this happened and in the process prevent it. Similarly, we're able to investigate the theft of intellectual property by tracing. For example, someone posts something and we're trying to find out the source. If I come and report that this was mine, I have a license for that. So we'll trace, okay, the person who actually posted it, where did they get it from? If you played a certain song without having paid the licenses for it, how did you get it? Digital forensics would come in and help you in tracing that. There's recovery of deleted data. This works very well for organizations. For example, you're hacked, you lose all your data, you have important customer information that you need to retain. Through digital forensic, we're able to work backwards and be able to trace and recover most of the data. You're able to identify areas of weakness through digital forensics. For example, you're able to know who are these with weak passwords, which passwords were hacked and why. How else can we strengthen our passwords so that no one else can have to be hacked through this channel? And the other one is to allow cybersecurity organizations to develop technologies that prevent hackers from getting in. This is basically the continuous learning curve that we get. Every time something goes wrong, we trace it back, find a solution for it. And that's the process we keep going through so that we offer a solution to a company that's not yet been hit before it's hit. So with regard to the general legislation on digital evidence, I'll focus here on Kenya. We have the Evidence Act, Cap 80, which basically says that anything that is printed from a computer has to be supported by a certificate, which is an electronic certificate, comes in a standard format, basically details the machine that you used to print the information. It details who printed it, the time it was printed, the date it was printed, so that when you're presenting it in court, you have some sort of evidence. Because it's not the same thing as a letter that has a signature and is dated. When it comes to electronic evidence, if I print an Excel sheet I worked on, I'll need an electronic certificate to be able to support that. We also have the Kenya Communications Amendment Act, which is similar to our Evidence Act. With regard to digital forensic, there's no specific legislation, but there are standards that we have been applying when conducting this digital forensics. For example, the ISO 27K series that are being used, and I know specifically for digital forensics, there is 27037 that's in place. We also have ANSI, Forensic Technology Standards, that have been able to guide our lab technicians when undertaking the digital forensic exercises. So with regard to digital forensic and evidence collection, we know that computers have been, everyone uses computers nowadays. So your ideal crimes are no longer a police officer receiving 50 shillings on the roadside. Everything is now moving digital. So we're now beginning to use a lot of electronic evidence in court. But sometimes obtaining this is difficult. So some of the pros and cons that we may face with regard to obtaining digital evidence, I'll start with the pros. One of the advantages is that it's easy to sift through. Before computers came into place, and you will find a number of organizations, mostly government, there's a lot of paperwork involved. So as an investigator, you go in and say, I want to know who signed for the payment for the purchase of this vehicle. And then you'll be led to a store that has piles and piles of boxes, not labeled, so you have no direction. Then you'll be told, Madam, angalia hapa. That means, Madam, check here. So you can imagine if I'm being led to a room with piles and piles of boxes, and I'm just trying to find who signed a specific voucher, I will take days. So the process of obtaining evidence was so tedious. So you'd find many people wouldn't get sufficient evidence. You've not been able to roll through the piles to be able to get this evidence. However, with digital forensics, we've been able to have systems in place. So now payments are run through the system. All I have to do is go and type the detail. Purchase of a car, March 2020. Narrows it down. Who approved it? I have a name. So something that would have taken me weeks, months maybe to get through, with systems, I'm able to get it almost instantly. The other element, the other advantage of digital forensics in evidence collection is we're able to retrieve our lost data. So in some cases, you'll go in and request someone for evidence of a payment voucher, a physical voucher, and an organization or a county will tell you the store got burnt and all our records are no longer available. And this was very prevalent for the longest time when trying to investigate, especially matters of corruption. But with the benefit of using digital evidence is now we have the system. So all I need to do is go into the system, find out who did these approvals. Even if I don't have the voucher, I can be able to use the electronic evidence available in court to be able to charge somebody for a crime. But generally, the disadvantages of digital evidence is the fact that it can be changed very quickly. So you'll find that there are people who are strung along for the wrong reasons. I can know I'm the one who did the error, however, because I know the weaknesses in the system, I'll go and change it and put somebody else's name. So it's very easy to get somebody else, go take the punishment for the crime that you committed. Number two, it's very costly. I see people sitting here with very nice suits. I'm sure you're paid very well. So getting people with the right skill set to be able to analyze this data is also expensive. It's not the same as getting someone to review documents. You have a special skill and it's expensive to manage. Those are the basic pros and cons of evidence. I'll just take you through two cases and brief highlights on how digital evidence was able to help us secure convictions in courts for crimes that were committed. We had an instance where a county chief finance officer had acquired over 300 million in wealth and was not able to account for it. So we had looked through his salaries, nothing is adding up to how a county officer is able to acquire 300 million. But all the evidence was deleted. We didn't have hard copy documents. We didn't know how to explain how he got the vehicles. However, through digital forensics, we were able to get a photo. And with that photo, we were able to locate properties, very many properties, because of the digital footprint. And because of that, he was not able to support how he got the wealth. But when you go to court, it's a matter of balance of probabilities. And because he can't support the 300 million, we're able to give the money back to the government. So we're able to save quite a bit of money through digital forensics. Same thing happened with a county executive committee member and a chief finance officer in a county where they took 26 million. We went through their computers, we were able to see that they signed on vouchers and had them there. I see there's some banks here, but I won't go into that. But I am glad that I was able to take you through what digital forensics, the benefits of digital forensics and how it's helped the government institutions, how it's helped the commission in the fight against corruption. So as my parting shot, I'd just encourage both private, public sector, and any individuals to be forensic ready. There are very many benefits of being aware of your environment, being aware of how you operate. I'm sure a lot has been said by the other speakers, so I won't go into repeating that, but thank you very much for the opportunity.